I now call to order the meeting of the directors of the 42nd Street Development Project, Inc. for Thursday, March 19, 2015. The directors have received the written materials in advance of this meeting. They're free to ask questions at any time. Please note that as specified on the agenda posted to the internet, we welcome public comment on the items on the following agenda. To ensure maximum opportunity for participation, speakers representing themselves may speak for up to 2 minutes each, and those representing groups may speak for up to 4 minutes, one speaker per group. Speakers' comments may address only items considered at today's meeting. Before we begin with the substantive portion of the meeting, I'd like to ask the directors whether anyone has any potential conflict of interest with respect to any of the items on the agenda. If so, I'd ask you to please make an appropriate disclosure on the record at this time. We will then be sure that you may recuse yourself from any discussion or vote to such item or items. Are there any conflicts on the agenda? Thank you. I'll now ask for a motion to approve the minutes of the October 21st, 2010 directors meeting.
So moved. They're exactly as I recall.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Approved. I'll now ask Robin Stout to present an item relating to the appointment of officers of the 42nd Street Development Project, Incorporated. Robin.
Perhaps to explain why we're all here after such a long period of time.
Okay, thank you.
As I passed out this map, which is color-coded, just to refresh everyone's recollection or to remind them of what the 42nd Street project is about. Basically, the properties in red on your map are the 6 office towers that were created as a result of the project. The 2 properties in green are entertainment retail complexes, each of which has a hotel above it, and the blue are the historic theaters. On the south side of the street, listed as the New Amsterdam, is the Walt Disney Theater, and then on the north side of the street are various for-profit and not-for-profit historic theaters. The ESD was a long-time owner of all of this property, actually for several decades, but pursuant to the project documents, and as you may have read in your 2010 minutes, the contemplation of the project was always that it would revert to the City of New York, and it did revert to the City of New York in the year 2012. But because of ESD's longstanding participation in the project, there are still a number of items left behind that ESD continues to look after. One is that if there is going to be a change in the general project plan, which would alter the nature of this area, we and you will have to approve that. ESD, the agency, and you as the board of directors will have to approve that. But there are also various other ancillary documents that require our signature because we were participants to that. There is an obligation at the Walt Disney New Amsterdam Theater, as is briefly discussed in your report. And lastly, which it will be for the second item today, this site here, what I call 8 North, and is the Proskauer building across 8th Avenue from the Port Authority bus terminal here. When that deal closed in the year 2006, there was a project fund that was set aside for project purposes, part of which I will ask authorization for the directors to spend in the second item today. The first item really is a housekeeping item. Because of the passage of time, the number of people who have been involved in the corporation and the subsidiary has dwindled. But because we have some continuing responsibilities, it is as a matter of corporate record keeping and to ensure that we have a suitable number of people who can execute required documentation, I am asking the directors to appoint the officers which are set forth on page 2 of your materials. Basically, these officers will simply mirror the corresponding officers of the parent, and we're asking that each of those officers be appointed ex officio. That means the office holder will be the officer of the subsidiary, so as set forth. We would recommend Howard Zimsky as president, Joe Chan as executive vice president, Elizabeth Fine as executive vice president for legal, Margaret Tobin as the chief financial officer, and Rob Godley as the treasurer. So we request the appointment of those officers.
Move it.
I have a question. Sorry, Rob.
You can second it and then ask questions.
Okay, I'll second it and then
there you
ask
go.
questions,
All right, there
okay?
you go.
So creating these positions or changing these positions so that they're ex officio will solve the problem that we've had of vacancies
as we have been trying to do with all of the subsidiaries, correct.
Right. Okay, because I'm rather disturbed by the fact that looking at who the the board members were prior to our new to our authorization of this new board.
May I suggest it was
There were-
a function of two things? One is there were relatively small number of corporate documents to be signed, and the second was without any other action item, there was a hesitancy to draw the subsidiary board together.
No, I understand that. However, as a director, I'm still concerned about the fact that we were not aware that there were these vacancies, and that this was, I mean, Peter Davidson has went to D.C., what, 2 years ago? That this was not drawn to our attention much more, in a much more timely fashion. Even if there was not anything that really needed to be signed, still as a director, we're responsible for oversight of this, and we don't know what's being signed, what's not being signed, what other responsibilities might be, what other actions might be needed. And that I would just like to register my dissatisfaction with this lapse of time, and just set the expectation that this is not going to happen again, because I know there are numerous small entities for which we have responsibility of some sort or another, and it's easy to lose track of them, and I just want to make sure we don't.
Yes, I agree completely, and that's part of the ex officio concept, was to
That,
avoid
at least
that
for this
problem.
board, it would be
Yes,
ongoing.
exactly
So
right.
if Howard decides to resign next week, after 2 months,
I'll let you all know.
Please don't.
thank you.
Yes, thank you. Very well-spoken comments.
We have a motion and a second. Any other comments or questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Great, carried. Robin?
And then the second and last item. The concept of the 42nd Street project, again, was that the commercial portions of the project would support the historic theaters. So the office towers pay something called a theater surcharge, which is a per square foot charge that goes to the historic theaters. That charge it escalates with inflation. It's about 20 cents or so per square foot of the buildable, I should say, of the rentable square foot of the office towers, and that is a few $100,000 a year, which the office towers pay towards the upkeep of the historic theaters. However, they are old and historic, and they have lots of need for tender loving care. 5 years ago, which was the source of the last 42DP meeting, we presented to you a plan for capital repairs for those theaters. There's a not-for-profit that runs the theaters called the New 42nd Street. The New 42nd Street had produced a 5-year capital plan at that time, of which we funded about between 30% and 40%, with $5 million. And that money came from the 8 North building, which, as I said, back in 2006, when that project closed, created a project fund of some $23 million. 5 years later, almost all of that initial $5 million has been spent, except as set forth in your board materials. There is actually one theater still unaccounted for on 42nd Street, which is the Times Square Theater. A little bit confusing, but it's an actual theater called the Times Square, which is 5E on your exhibit. It's a small theater with a small auditorium, which fronts directly on 42nd Street. So it's been very hard to let. It actually has had a number of tenants over the years, but they have never culminated in an actual development. 5 years ago, there was an expectation that we would be able to spend $1 million on getting that theater going. I'm sorry to report that that is not the case, so that $1 million has not been spent. So the first part of the second item is to amend that agreement from 5 years ago to allow that $1 million, instead of being spent on the Times Square Theater, to be spent on the adjacent New Victory Theater, which is 5A on your exhibit. That theater, you may know, is the Children's Theater. It has wonderful programming for children of all ages. The auditorium has been maintained very well over the years, but the lobby space is in need of upgrade, including an ADA accessible bathroom. So the first request is to allow for an amendment of the existing agreement to permit $1 million of those funds to be used for the New Victory as opposed to the Times Square. The second part of this second item is a new capital repair funding item agreement. The concept is basically to continue the capital funding. The new 42nd Street again has put together another 5-year capital plan indicating what they believe is the necessary upkeep of the historic theaters over the next 5 years. That has been reviewed both by our staff and by the City Economic Development Corporation. The City Economic Development Corporation has actually already approved the application of these funds, which the $5 million would be split evenly between the city and the state out of this 8 North pot of money as explained in the materials. So again, the second part of the application is to request for an approval of that second $5 million. And I'd be happy to take questions.
Yep.
2 questions. So one, what happens to Site 5E? Are there any plans for it?
Plans, yes.
Is there anything that can realistically be done with a site like that?
Well,
I mean, my
yes,
recollection is
we
that those
believe
are all
the answer
very,
to that
very
is yes.
small,
As I say,
narrow.
over the years, actually it had been leased actually out to potential developers at least twice in the last 5 years. And those plans have not come to fruition, and as I say, very disappointing. Again, it may not be legitimate theater use based on the size and the location of the auditorium space, but it is in an extremely high traffic area at this point. I'm very surprised it hasn't been put to other use at the moment. But
could it be used as a store or some other commercial?
Well,
or is
it can
the
be.
zoning
That would
prohibit
not
that?
be our preference. Obviously, we're trying to maintain the atmosphere of an entertainment district, particularly with an auditorium. But that may
Bueno
be.
Theater was there.
That may be back to changes. If there are changes to the general project plan, that may be something that we may need to contemplate. Actually, one of the not the last tenant, but the tenant before that was going to be a retail store, which was going to dynamically use the stage and the auditorium in a way that would make it interesting, not theater, but a retail concept. So there continue to be high hopes for the theater, and I should have said that the second $5 million, we have set aside $1 million of that for the Times Square to help it get off the ground. So we're not losing that $1 million from the Times Square. And we continue to work very hard on trying to let the space.
Is there any possibility of perhaps annexing it to one of the neighboring buildings so that it could just be an additional space for an existing?
Funny you should mention that. That is one of the potential plans on the drawing board.
There you go.
Move it.
I've seen this movie before somewhere.
Any other questions? Any comments from the public on this item? Motion to approve?
Move it.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? No. Motion carried. Motion to adjourn?
Move.
Second.
Thank you very much. Thank you.